Investors are looking for more tangible data that they can use to aid comparability across peers. So there's been a lot of time and effort in the qualitative side of things, and there's a lot of documentation, and there's, publication after publication after publication, and actually sometimes it's hard to see the wood for the trees when there's so much information out there. And I think what investors are increasingly wanting to do is just think, how can I compare this bank with this bank with this bank, or this company with this company with this company within the same industry? And I think there's two ways of doing that. There's using ESG scores and rating agencies, and scoring is one way. Or it's about trying to find tangible and comparable KPIs and data that they can use that's very, very tangible. They can say, well, if you're investing in this or not investing in that, what is your peers doing, or what is their comparison, so that they can make informed decisions. So I think it's about trying to be a bit more tangible with some of the key messages that you want to get across. I think you've got to remember that there's a range of stakeholders. It's not just your investors, and each of those stakeholders has different needs and wants from what they want to get from certain reports. I think the answer is to probably not try to consolidate everything into one report and make one report fit for all. So, for example, if you think about your sustainability report as one example, it would have started off with X number of stakeholders, and that's grown, and the interest has grown. And as you're trying to appease all of these stakeholders, the report grows. Now, I think it's important that you give stakeholders to a certain extent what they need and want, but it might not be the best means to do it through one report. So sometimes it's breaking it down, thinking about your individual stakeholders, thinking about what they need, and then thinking about, actually, is it better to do that through a suite of reports that are more directed to that particular stakeholder? So, for example, with investors, is it just having a high-level investment case and then the tangible data available, for example, in an Excel format for them to then access, so that they don't have to sift through all of this information? Whereas, for colleagues, they might like to have the more qualitative storytelling side of things and less of the numbers. Yeah, so look, I think in some respects, ESG becoming more popular, it actually works in our favour, because the uniqueness of our bank is now becoming more appreciated in the market. We do have a differentiation in that it is, part of our DNA. It is who we are. It's embedded in the day-to-day running of the bank. It's embedded in the day-to-day strategy of the bank. Our strategy is fully entwined with our values and our ethics and our ESG. It's part of our product propositions, etc. So I think for us, the fact that it's embedded and it's not an add-on does still give us an advantage, but it's absolutely essential that now it is becoming more popular amongst peers, that we are constantly looking at how we can do better, how we can stay ahead of the curve, how we can demonstrate that ESG for us is fundamental and part of the day-to-day business, and that we are best in class at doing this, and that we are rated by Sustainalytics as the UK's leading ethical bank, and we need to demonstrate that in the day-to-day running of the organisation, which we have our executive team, top-down board. It's all part of the day-to-day running, and I think that's really important. So we have it at the moment, and look, the one thing you shouldn't do is specifically choose the ratings that suit your strategy. You need to be transparent and choose the ratings that are most used by your investors, and that's the right decision to make. I think what's important is us understanding the reasons why we're rated the way we are, and then making sure that we can talk to our investors and educate our investors on why we've got the rating we have, and then it's ultimately up for them to decide what they buy in and what is more important to them. So I think for us, the way we approach ratings is to look at the peer set, look at who the peer sets are using and what investors value the most and what's most important to them, and then they will be the ratings that we decide to go with. In the large part, because of who we are, we score the highest, or we're market leading, or we generally score very highly. but there will be outliers, and I think that just highlights the fact that whilst using rating agencies can be helpful, actually there needs to be, organisations need to make their own assessments too, because you're getting different conclusions from different rating agencies. So you have to decide which align best to your view of ESG. It's really important. I think what I would say is we should try as IR professionals as much as possible to try and embed ESG rather than separate it and have it as a separate subject. So I think as an educational piece, as an awareness piece, there's a huge benefit in doing something like that. But what we want to try and do is incorporate it into what we're already doing day to day. So if you're having a capital markets day or you're having investor engagement, how can you make sure that you're talking about ESG as part of that rather than it being a separate topic of conversation? So as an initial education piece, absolutely, I think that would be really, really beneficial. But going forward, I think I would try to embed ESG in your existing investor communications, existing investor events that you've got happening. I think as there starts to become more disclosure requirements, more regulations, I think that questions from investors will move to compliance. So it will move a lot. I think at the moment, up until now, it's been about education, it's been about understanding where you sit, what you're doing, how they can measure you. I think as we move on and we look into 2024 and 2025, it's going to be about how are you compliant.